Dr. Kim Harper is a board-certified chiropractor who has been practicing for 20 years. Her passion is working with children and families on natural health care and healthy living. She lives in Fishers with her husband. Oops, I'm supposed to be doing this on there, sorry. She lives in Fishers with her husband of 22 years, is the mother of 3 children, and 2 attending Ball State, and 1 is a freshman at Fishers High School. Please give it up for Dr. Kim Harper as she comes to talk with us this evening.
Well, thank you very much. As you saw from our first slide there, let me see if I can back it up for a second. This is just an example of how far out of control things have gotten. Remember good old Charlie Brown we all grew up with? Well, if Charlie Brown was around today, he would have multiple diagnoses, as you can tell. So what we're going to talk about tonight is the over-drugging of our children. And the facts are a staggering 25% of children today are on prescription medication, and 7% of those are on 2 or more. This number has skyrocketed in the last 30 years. I mean, how many of you can remember when you were kids, your friends being on medications or having allergies or those kind of things? This is getting just completely out of control. And despite the alarming amount of children that are on medication today, many of these drugs were never tested as safe for use with children. So we've got what's called guesstimating medicine going on. Physicians are prescribing drugs based on their best guess estimate as to the dosage or the effectiveness or even the safety of the drugs that they're giving to children. So research on the drug affects, the research is dismal for kids today. These drugs have not been tested as safe for children, and oftentimes they're creating worse problems from the drug than the one they're initially trying to treat. And this is called off-labeling. Off-labeling means using a medication for someone or something that it's not been clinically tested as safe for. And 2/3 of the drugs prescribed to children today are those off-label drugs. And 80% of major children's hospitals are using the off-label drugs. This is just a list of the top 10 off-label drugs out there. Many of them you might recognize: albuterol, Prozac, Zoloft, Ritalin. These are the ones that you can just think of. So with all these drugs being prescribed and kids getting less healthy, we need to start focusing on what's the problem, because obviously drugs are not the answer. We need to start looking at lifestyle changes in children, because the food and chemicals they ingest and the move towards sedentary activities are creating some of the problems we're noticing. We live in a toxic food environment, and everyone probably knows that already, but did you know that 20% of children are eating fast food at least 3 times a week? And approximately $150 billion a year is being spent on fast food. And then we go to the processed food, okay? Most of the foods on grocery shelves have at least 1 or more of these chemicals that are listed here. So it's always a good idea, many of you have probably heard, when you go to the grocery store, just shop around the perimeter. Don't go down the aisles in the middle. Most of your healthiest food is on the perimeter of the store. And then we have genetically engineered foods. These foods are getting more and more dangerous because genetically engineered means that the DNA of the food has been changed into something that your body no longer recognizes, creating more chronic diseases like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and so on. European countries are acutely aware of this problem, and they're starting to stop imports of food from the United States because they want to block the harmful effects of genetically modified foods from harming their populations. And caffeine. Caffeine is a drug, and it's becoming a growing problem. Did you know that a can of soda contains about 55 milligrams of caffeine, but an energy drink has 350 milligrams? And there is something called caffeine intoxication. With caffeine intoxication, you see nervousness, irritability, all kinds of GI problems, that kind of thing. And in a lot of countries, these high caffeinated beverages are actually treated as controlled substances. And children under the age of 18 are not actually able to purchase them. And sugar. Sugar is definitely, not only the primary cause of obesity, but also being linked to, lethal and chronic diseases. So in the early 1900s, the average person in our country consumed about 20 pounds of sugar per year. Today, that number has risen to over 140 pounds of sugar per person per year. And several studies have linked behavioral issues in children to their high sugar intake. This is just kind of a sign of the times. So just say no to drugs. How many times have we heard that mantra? It's been going on and on and on. In our schools, we're teaching kids just say no to drugs, but what are we teaching them at home? Every time they don't feel well or something's wrong, just take a Tylenol or just take this or just take that. So is it any wonder then when kids want to feel better or feel good that they're turning to these other drugs? And what about the drugs that children don't choose to take? Vaccines have all these different toxins in there, and what we're teaching children is that your body can't actually be healthy unless you inject in all of these chemicals. Children will be given 48 doses of 14 different vaccinations by the time they're age 6, and actually that number has now risen to 53 doses of vaccine by the time they start kindergarten. And many of the things that we're vaccinating for are not even life-threatening. Again, we are the only industrialized nation in the world that vaccinates children under the age of 12 months, because other countries know that children under that age cannot actually form antibodies, so the early vaccination doesn't even create immunity at all. And what about the sedentary lifestyle? Kids are spending too much time sitting in front of the TV, in front of the computer, and really hardly ever getting outside to play. They're spending too much time plugged in. And what we're seeing is the average child between school and home is spending about 8.5 hours a day being plugged in. This is just kind of a staggering statistic that 42% of children aged 6 to 11 are getting the recommended amount of daily exercise. And a study measuring the arm and core strength in 10-year-olds showed a decrease of 26% just from 1998 to 2008. So what do all these medications and sedentary lifestyle lead to? Obesity, but also adult diseases spilling over onto our children. If you look at the graph there, you can see in the early 70s, the obesity rate in children was about 5 to 6%. In the early 2000s, it was up to like 12 to 17%, and today that percentage is about 20% and rising. So we need to start expanding to a wellness concept, a wellness lifestyle, where we're teaching people how to eat well, think well, and move well. The medical model believes that if you're not having symptoms, then you're well. And the problem with that is oftentimes we're unable to prevent problems until they're actually manifesting. Where the wellness model recognizes that the absence of symptoms doesn't mean health. That the advantage of that model is that you're actually preventing problems from occurring. So how do you create wellness for your family? Well, you can start by decreasing the chemicals in your food, in your water, in the environment that can place negative stress on a child's growing body. Start to read food labels and buy healthy groceries. Encourage your child to eat healthy, both at home and at restaurants. And really monitor the emotional stress that is common among children and teens, which may have an adverse effect on their well-being. And don't be afraid to let your child fight off an illness on their own. It's how their body actually creates a stronger immune system. 50 years ago, progressive parents started using dentistry as a form of wellness. 25 years ago, progressive parents started using chiropractic as a form of wellness for their children. And some people might ask, well, why would I bring a child to a chiropractor? And it's because a chiropractor is a specialist in the nervous system. Their job is to remove interference to that nervous system, and since every system in the body is controlled by the nervous system, the better the nervous system works, the better the body works. And the better the systems of the body work, including the immune system. Because a healthy nervous system equals a healthy child. So encourage your child to run, jump, get active, hike, bike, and just be outside. Do some physical activities together as a family or even just with friends. And strive for at least a minimum of 60 minutes of physical activity per day. Researchers are really starting to notice the trends that for the first time in history, children are less healthy than the generation before them, and not just a little less healthy, exponentially less healthy in all areas of their life. This is the first generation of children not expected to outlive their parents, and we have to change that now. Thank you.